here for this second session, and hopefully we'll keep doing more of these. So, all right, well, I'm going to get started. So here, these are some sample guidelines that I've placed here at the start of the session that you can do in your classes, and we'll talk more about this later, but I just wanted to have that there for you guys. And if you didn't get the link, here it is one more time in the chat. Please feel free to open that in another tab in your browser and bookmark it, save it, because everything we go over today is going to be, you can get actual documentation and step-by-steps with pictures and big red arrows showing you how to do things. So please save that just in case if you need it. And that link that I just put in the chat, that's where it's going to take you. It's going to take you to this page, and we have tutorials there just for faculty. And if you want to share with your students, you can drop this link of tutorials for students in your class as well. But we'll talk about some easier ways to set up your class for Zoom and get that information to students. But I just wanted you guys to know that that's there. All right, let me move this around. So thank you so much for coming today. My name's Yvonne Stevenson, and I'm an instructional designer here at WT. And we hope that your semester is off to a good start. And hopefully the rest of the semester will get even better, because we're going to learn a little more about Zoom today. And we can't thank you enough for making the time to come and learn with us today. We know there's a lot going on and there's so much to do. So today's session, we're going to cover some important Zoom topics dealing with classroom management and engagement. And we're very limited. We have with quite a bit to cover. So if you have specific questions or concerns, or maybe even a rant, because Zoom can be frustrating, it's probably better to wait until after the session ends. I'm happy to stay in the meeting afterward, or you can always contact Chris, Krista, or myself via email. You can call us by phone, or just drop by in our suite, and we're always happy to listen. So feel free to ask on-topic questions in the chat. Dr. Favela and Chris are here to monitor, or you can just hold your questions and ask them at the end if you prefer. I know chat is distracting for some participants, so just keep that in mind. And with everything I go over today, kind of be thinking about how you might adopt the tool we go over or the feature for use with your students in your classes via Zoom. So please, please, please don't get overwhelmed with this session. You're not going to memorize everything that I share with you today. And I mean, we can't learn all this stuff in an hour, and also I need to warn you, I'm going to go over a little bit. So I'm hoping just to go over at least 10 minutes. So please leave if you need to at any point, but I just want to encourage you to maybe take notes, at the very least, become aware of some of these options that we're talking about today. I can always send you step-by-step instructions or refer you back to that site where you can find whatever we go over today. And remember, you're going to get the link to this recording to review this again within the next week or so. Nothing here is do or die, especially if you need to leave at any point. I know some of us are working from home and there's distractions at home. We all know they're just there. So we're going to take a relaxed approach. We're not trying to stress anybody out today. Okay, so before we get into engagement, I want to issue one final disclaimer. So if any of the topics or the features that we go over today are not something that you want to use, or you just don't like some of those features, that is okay. You don't have to use anything that we go over today in Zoom. So nothing is mandatory. We're not the Zoom police. And the truth is that there is not one size fits all recommendation that I could ever make that works for everybody's courses. Everybody has different preferences, and we all have different class formats as well. So all I ask is that you please remain positive in any feedback that you give during the session. So if you're negative, it can demoralize others or cause a domino effect where the session becomes a gripe fest and unproductive. And I don't think anybody here would do that. I think everyone here is trying to do everything they can to improve learning for students. And our team wants to help you with that, which is why we're doing this session today. So let's talk about some easy things to implement for more engagement. Okay, so here are our meeting reactions. So this is an alternative to chat. Participants can stay engaged by using the reactions located on the participant controls. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see that at the end. And I encourage you to use these in our session. They can help you stay engaged, and they signal to me that you're following along. And you can encourage your students to do that as well. Feel free to use them to react to anything I'm saying or anything you see on the screen. When you select a reaction, it stays up for about 5 seconds on the video feed on the thumbnail, as you can see here. And it'll do that even if your camera's off. Your camera doesn't have to be on for you to see those. You can go ahead and test this now if you haven't. If you want to use this in your meetings, all you have to do is turn this on in your account settings through the WT Zoom website under basic in-meeting settings. And we'll talk about how to get to those WT website settings later on. So that's one of the things you can use for engagement. And you can also stay engaged and have students stay engaged as well by using the nonverbal feedback. And that's that row right below the reactions. And the nonverbal feedback is a little different, and it's really neat because the host can ask a question, and then participants can select one of these icons here or the ones here, or you can click more and you'll get more icons that come up. And then the icon pops up on the video feed again. So as participants select the feedback icons, this feature is really cool because it tallies all of the answers as shown in this second picture here. So if you click on the participants panel at the bottom of your screen, it's a little before the reactions. If you click on that, you can see what everybody's answering. So it's really neat because it'll tally it. Like here, for example, one person said, I have the 1 there, and one person selected yes. And these clear after about 10 seconds. So don't ask anything that's too important because they won't stay up forever. The only thing that stays up until either you put the hand down or the student puts their hand down is the raise hand feature. That'll never go away until you put people's hands down. And you can do all that by selecting the participants panel, going to more, and you can lower everybody's hands at once, or students can lower their own hand in the participants panel as well. So let's try that nonverbal feedback and answer this question for me. Let me know if you already knew about the nonverbal feedback under the reactions button. Click yes if you knew about it, or click no if you didn't already know about it. Awesome. All right, we had some people, Steve was like, I already know about this, and several other people said, nope, didn't know about it. And you see how it cleared. I don't know if you guys had your participants panel open, but they already cleared. So you got to do it kind of quick because it does go away. All right, so that feature is really, it's a quick way to get tallied feedback for a simple question without having to do a full-blown poll ahead of time, which we're going to be talking about now. So I want to hear from you first before I show you how to do a poll. I want to hear from you, and I put together a couple of questions. Let me go ahead and launch that because I want to know about the mix of people that are in here. So let me launch this. And you should see a screen pop up. And so go ahead and participate in my poll. First question, and by the way, this is anonymous, so we're not going to know who answered what. There are ways to set it to be, to show who answered what later on in your reports, but just know that all of your feedback today is anonymous, so feel free to be honest. So what type of courses are you teaching this coming semester? Select all that apply. I already see that people have already started giving feedback. So are you HyFlex, meaning you're in-person, synchronous, and asynchronous? Are you online? Are you just doing in-person, or are you doing a mix of both? These options, you can click more than one because I know you might have more than one format, which gets kind of fun, right? Hard to keep them straight. And the second question is, what is your level of confidence in teaching using Zoom? And it looks like we got 5 out of the 8 people participating, 6 out of 8. Great. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll, and I'm going to share the results with you guys. All right, so it looks like the majority of our faculty in this session and staff are teaching mostly online courses. There are a few doing HyFlex and in-person, which can be very challenging. All right, so nobody selected very confident, which is fine. I think we're kind of all in the same boat. Zoom is always getting new features. It's always changing. There's always new things happening and not one person can know it all. And so just find comfort in knowing that, hey, we're all in the same boat. We're all learning this stuff together. So some people are somewhat confident or not very confident, but our goal by the end of the session, you should feel more confident about using Zoom in your classroom. All right, thank you guys for participating. Okay, so if you liked that poll feature, as the host, you can create a poll for your class meetings, which has to be done before the meeting. So polling takes quite a bit of planning, unlike the meeting reactions, which you can just do on the fly. So when you launch, when you create the poll before the meeting, then you launch it in the meeting just like I did. And I'm going to quickly show you how to do this. Try not to get bogged down in these steps. You don't have to learn them now. You can always use our instruction sheet as needed or review this recording later whenever you're ready to implement it. So how do we create a poll? Well, first you want to create a poll before you're in the meeting. Thus, after you set the meeting up, I'm going to assume everybody knows how to set a meeting up. If not, we can send you easy instructions. Just let us know. It's not that difficult, but we just have some settings highlighted that you should use to make your life easier, like recording in the cloud. That way it drops into your ensemble automatically, things like that. But we can send that to you if you need those extra instructions. But we're going to assume everybody has their meeting set up. So after you set your meeting up, you'll go to the WT Zoom site at wtamu.zoom.us. And so I have that written out on the screen. You might want to bookmark this site or put it or have it somewhere saved, this URL, or memorize it, wtamu.zoom.us. And you want to type it into your address bar as you see it there. Don't go search it in Google or anything like that. And you don't have to do this now, but this is how you can access more in-depth account settings, like adding a poll. Or turning on reactions and nonverbal feedback for yourself in meetings. All right, so we want to make sure that we know this website. And then, so Zoom through WT Class, I know it's kind of confusing because you can get to Zoom through different avenues. So Zoom through WT Class is limited in the settings that you can access. And then the desktop client, there are a whole different set of settings. And the desktop client is the Zoom software that you've downloaded that lives on your computer or your device. And so you want to continue to set up meetings through WT Class. We're not telling you to change that. Since that's the easiest way for students to access Zoom, you want to keep doing it the way you always have been in WT Class. But the bottom line here is that you have to go to this site to add a poll to an existing meeting. So when you get to the Zoom site, you have to sign in, which is the third option at the bottom. And you have to use your single sign-on faculty credentials or your staff credentials, and you'll have to Duo. This is not how students log in, so please don't direct students to this website because they won't be able to log in, and we'll talk more about that. And then after login, you're going to click the meetings button and locate the meeting you want to add the polls to. So you have to click on the topic, and by topic, I mean the title here, to get to the options. I know when you hover over it, it's going to be tempting to click edit, but you have to click the title. And once you click the meeting topic, you'll see all of your meeting information pop up, but you'll have to scroll all the way down to locate the poll section. And so here it says you have not created any polls yet. And so I want to click on add there right next to it to add my poll to that meeting. And once I click that, that'll pop up the poll window, and then I can add the poll. So where you see the A, you can title the poll. Right underneath that box, you can check for the poll to be anonymous. If you don't check that box, then the poll's not going to be anonymous, and the name that students join the meeting with will show in a report that you can run in the poll for poll results later. So it's not going to just show up while you're in the meeting. You can run a report to see those later. So I can't run that report with the poll you just took since I checked that box to make it anonymous. So nothing's going to show up. Then where you see the B, that's where you type your question. And under that box is where you allow users to either only select one answer choice or to select multiple answers like I did in that first question for you. And then where you see the letter C, that's where you can type answer choices. And as you can see, it allows for several. So you can go crazy if you want to add that many answer choices. And so you can add additional questions. Just know that any questions that you add here, they're all placed in the same screen when launched. So if you don't want to have all of your questions given all at once, then just make a different poll to launch at a different time. So for example, I had one poll earlier with 2 questions that you guys took. I have another poll with 2 different questions on a different topic that I want to ask you, but I'm going to ask them to you later. So I created 2 different polls. And so that's how you create a poll before a meeting. After you've added your poll to the meeting, you then want to launch the poll in the meeting the way I did. So if you look at the bottom of this picture where the A is, here at the bottom, you'll see where the polls button is for the host to launch the poll. Now you guys as participants, you can't see this, but this is what you would see when you have a poll or more available in your own meeting as a host. So where you see the B at the top here, that is where you can select the poll you want to launch if you have more than one. So later, if we have time, hopefully I don't go over too long, we can click this drop-down menu and I would select the different poll that I want you to participate in. And so once you're ready to have users participate, you must click Launch Polling. This button here, where the letter C is, you have to click that in order for people to see your poll. And so after you launch the poll, it'll say in progress across the top in green, and you have that timer there. And so the black bar right underneath is a good thing to look at because it tells you how many people have participated out of total attendees. So that's why I was like, well, I know Krista and Chris aren't going to participate, and we had 8 people here. And so once 6 participated, I knew to end the poll. So you don't have to keep it up as long as you kind of pay attention to those numbers. And then only you'll be able to see the answers as they come in. I have it set up to where you can see all of my windows, so you may have been able to see those beforehand. But once you've allotted enough time, you have to end the poll at the bottom of the screen, and that'll close down the results. If you don't end the polling, let's say if I just click this X up here, the results will not be recorded. And so if you're wanting to refer this to later, at a later date, make sure you click End Polling. Don't just click the X at the top. So remember to end the poll. Don't just close the window. And after you end the poll, you can share the results by clicking Share Results. It'll have that same box, and just click that. And then that's if you want to share them. Some people may not want to share the results. So if you do share, what'll happen is you'll see this new screen pop up, and the green bar at the top of the screen indicates that you're sharing the results. So you'll be able to know if people can see them or not. And then participants will have a screen pop up, and then it's up to them when they want to close it or get rid of it. You can also relaunch the poll after you've closed it by clicking the relaunch poll option as shown in that first picture. But just know that relaunching the poll will clear any previous data. So don't relaunch if you want to keep the answers from the first go round. And then here, just please note that you're limited to 25 polls per meeting. So this is important because if you have a reoccurring meeting that you set up for the entire semester, just know that you may have to delete some polls through the WT Zoom website. And it's easy to do. All you have to do is click on the meeting, scroll down, and instead of using the add button, you're going to click on the delete button for the poll that you want to get rid of. Or if you want to edit and change up your questions, you can also do that as well. You can adjust it here as you need to. So the last thing about polls is you can review your poll results at a later date through the WT Zoom website. And you can do that by clicking on the reports option once you've logged in, and then select your meeting. And that allows you to check attendance for your meeting. So if you're taking attendance via Zoom, you want to go to wtmu.zoom.us, log in, do your single sign-on duo, click on reports. And so if you want to do an attendance report, you can click on usage, and that'll show you everybody who attended your meeting. You can do unique logins, or you can see when maybe somebody came in, when they left. Also, you can select meeting, and that'll show you the poll results. So that's how you can get to reports and run the different reports that are available there. And so one of the things you want to remember is that if you're going to use these reports for anything, it's important that students enter the meeting with their full name typed in when they join the meeting. And I'll show you how to give them the ability to change and enter their full name once we get into the meeting controls. But if they enter like, let's see. No, nobody has a weird name here. I can sort of tell who everybody is. But if somebody just puts guest or not a full name, you're just going to see that in the report and you'll have to figure it out. But we'll talk about how to stop that from happening once we get into the meeting controls. All right, so I'm going to come at you fast with another tool. So here is OneDrive. So in case you didn't know, OneDrive is cloud storage. And everybody at WT has 1 terabyte of space that you can access from anywhere you have an internet connection. And so OneDrive is cool because it eliminates a need for a flash drive, and you'll no longer be tied to a specific computer, your office computer, or a specific device for files. You can access OneDrive from anywhere, and then you have the ability to create, collaborate, and share files. So let me show you how easy it is to collaborate live and get feedback from your class, because typically we just think of this, oh, well, I can just share a file, but we don't think about it in terms of, hey, I can share a file and see people working in it live. So don't get bogged down in these steps that I'm about to show you. This is a lot to take in, and especially since it's new, it might seem a little foreign to some of you, but you can always rewatch this video or use the step-by-step instructions to guide you whenever you're ready to implement this. So first off, you're going to go to onedrive.com. Again, everybody has access to this because you're employed at WT. Your single sign-on will work. And then you sign on with your single sign-on credentials. And so Duo is going to be required. So make sure you have your phone. And you'll sign in by clicking the sign in button at the top. And then you'll have a screen pop open and you'll put your email address, which it should be at wtamu.edu. And so for instance, mine is my first initial and my last name. And then once you hit next, this is what OneDrive looks like once you're logged in. And once you're in, you can create a file by clicking the blue button at the top of the page here that says new. And then you can select a file type like Word or PowerPoint. And it's really neat because you can do this from anywhere. You don't have to have the full-blown Word, PowerPoint, Excel. You don't have to have the full program because these are just some easy, quick web versions that you can get to quickly to create a fast document, like something to share in class. And so once you create and complete your file, you'll see it listed on your screen. There you can see the PowerPoint presentation I created in the first picture here. And then when you're ready to share that, you can locate that share button. It's that one with the arrow there, and you can click it and leave the defaults. You're going to see another screen pop up, and just leave it at the default where it says anyone with the link can edit. And so from that screen, you can click copy link at the bottom, and then you paste that link into your Zoom chat, or you can put it in WT class for your students to access. And then, so here's where you could paste it in your chat. So as students access the file, you can share your Zoom screen that has the shared file. So you would open that up in your browser. Maybe you'd open up the PowerPoint, then you'd share your screen so students can see that PowerPoint that you just created. And then you can watch your students work and update live. So you may be wondering, well, why would I do this? I don't understand what the point is. Why do you want to just share a file? Well, you can use this as a way to either take attendance or as a way to create a participation activity. You can also create a question and answer slide or a document where students type their questions in that they have as they come up. This would be a great alternative to like monitoring chat. I know that can get overwhelming sometimes, especially if you have one monitor, you're trying to do PowerPoint, Zoom disappears and you're trying to find that chat screen. Well, what if you just shared a document with them and then you bring it up when you're ready after the lecture or at any point, You choose, and then you address what's relevant, you hold what's not, or you save questions to address at the next class, or you decide to address something later with a video, or suggest that someone get extra attention during your office hours for a longer question. So you can use this to do all sorts of things. You can also use this for group discussions. If you break your students out into breakout sessions, have them work in a shared document versus them just talking and not being on topic. Because when you do breakout sessions, you can't be in all the sessions at once. So this is a great way for students to brainstorm or summarize topics, and then you can see at a glance their progress on a file that you share, and pop into a breakout session if the group isn't making progress on a document, because you can see them as they're working. And you can get really creative with this, and you can see things live as they happen. And this just creates a lot more engagement when students participate in a shared file versus them just kind of just watching you work with a file. And so I think these tips should answer most of your questions if you're thinking about using this. So tip number 1, share file copies or portions of file copies. So for example, have a master copy of a Q&A slide if you decide that's how you want to take questions, or an attendance document. Then create a copy for each of your courses with the course name, section, and date, and then the file name. You should have all that in the file name, so it can be easy to refer to later. So in addition, use the anyone can edit link option as I showed you in that screenshot. Because remember, students don't have the @wtamu.edu email. They have the buffs.wtamu.edu email. So if you limit the sharing, that could cause problems with students accessing it. So again, keep it to the default, which anybody can edit. And then also ask students to log in to their Outlook email before clicking the link that you share. When they're logged into anything Microsoft on the web, it'll hold their login information, and you'll be able to see full names on the edit history of the document. And yes, there is a way to see all of the edits and return to previous versions of a file, which is really handy for group work. So you can track who's doing what and who's not doing anything. So please note that you can, let me see, there is an option. So by the file, there are 3 dots, and you can click on that, and you can click on Manage Access to stop sharing a file at any point, or set an expiration date for when students lose access to the file. And so lastly, you want to remind students that the Code of Conduct applies to online environments. So that way they're not doing anything they're not supposed to with anything you share. So that was all about OneDrive. Now let's move on to breakout rooms. So breakout rooms allow you to split your Zoom meeting up into 50 separate sessions. So they're great for smaller discussions. And so students may be able to engage more comfortably in a smaller group, and this can help them feel more connected to the class. So especially if they meet with the same group members more frequently, that makes a big difference. I know of several faculty here at WT that created small groups that students stayed in all semester in the fall, and the students all saw the same people once a week, and they were much more engaged, and they felt more accountable to the group, so they were showing up more regularly. So that's just something to think about. So breakout rooms do require a few steps. First, you create the rooms, you adjust the options on the room, then you have to open the rooms for users to enter, and then you close the rooms to get everybody back into the main room, or like we're in the main room right now. So again, don't get bogged down in all of this. I wish we could have done a demo to where I could put you all in groups, but we're kind of going through a lot of things, but I'll just show you real quickly how to do this whenever you feel you're ready, if you decide to. So while you're in the meeting as the host, you can click and locate the breakout rooms button in the meeting controls as shown there. You guys don't have this option right now because you're not the host in the meeting. So what you want to do first is select the number of rooms in which you split your participants to. Then you select how you want to assign your groups. So automatically means Zoom will split everyone up evenly or as evenly as possible depending on the math. If you select manually, that lets you move participants into specific rooms, and this takes more time since you do it manually. So it's probably not a good idea to use assign manually for a larger group. Or you can pick let participants choose a room, which lets them do just that. They can select and enter any room they want. This works best if you assign groups ahead of time, like say groups 1 through 4 at the start of the semester, and let students know what group they're in WT class, post it somewhere, and then when you get to the Zoom meeting, they can just go into their designated breakout room without you having to manually assign them. And then that helps if you want to keep the same people in the group. Just let them know what group they're in, you create the rooms, and then once you get into Zoom, they go into their own rooms and you don't have to worry about it. Then make sure you click, then make sure you click and create breakout rooms. So your rooms will be created, but they're not going to start out automatically. So I think this is where people kind of get a little tripped up. So they don't start automatically in case you want to manage the rooms prior to starting. And it's a good thing to look over these options and select what you want to work for your class. So here's some options that you can select or unchecked. So move all assigned participants into breakout rooms. If you check that option, it's going to move all the participants into the breakout room automatically. So if this option is unchecked, the participants need to click the join button to be added to the room. So that kind of takes some time, and sometimes students don't know what to do. So I think it's better to move them into the room automatically. Or if you want students to be present and actually have to click join, then you might want to leave that unchecked. So if students self-select a room, you can also disable them from moving into any other groups after they're in the actual group. So there's that second option there. So allow participants to return to the main session at any time. If that's unchecked, like it is right now, then when students are moved to a breakout room, they need to wait for the host or the co-host to end the breakout rooms for them to come back. If you select auto close breakout room after a few minutes, if that option's checked, the host and the co-host get a notification when the breakout room time is up, and the room ends after the chosen time you set there. So there's a lot of different options. Either you can have it all done automatically, so it's a little more hands-off, or you can set it to students have to do a little more manual work and you do as well. That way you have more control of who's coming back into the main room. And then that countdown timer, if that's checked, the participants will be given a countdown of how much time they have left before returning to the main room. And then, so once you set your room options, once you have them how you want them, the final step is to click open all rooms. And that is what actually starts them. So once you're ready, you click open breakout rooms. And then depending on whatever options you have set there, users have to click join as shown in this first picture here. Or if you didn't select them to join the room automatically, then they'll just see this screen right away. But either way, they're gonna see this screen here, and it takes a while and it kind of flashes. So if you ever do a breakout room, don't worry, the screen flashing and you seeing this is normal. And so if you set it for students to set up their own rooms, they'll see a list of open rooms and they can just click join to enter whichever room they need to be in. And then just for your information, the participant screen flashes. And so that might throw some people off, but just kind of warn people before you do that. And so the host can join any of the existing rooms by clicking join by the room name. So if you create your groups 1 through 4, you have your rooms, and then students can go ahead and click those. So the host can leave by clicking leave from whatever breakout room they're in. If hosts don't join a room, then they stay in the main meeting room. So you can move in and out of the groups, but you have to move in and out of them one at a time. And then as shown here in this first picture, if a breakout room, if a breakout group needs help, they can request help. At the bottom of their controls, they have an ask for help button. And then what that does is when they click on it, then you get notified with this notification down here, and it says, hey, help is needed. And then you can decide if you want to join that breakout room or just click later and decide to go to that room whenever you're ready. You can also broadcast a message to everyone in the group, as shown here in that second picture at the bottom. And you can start telling people to wrap things up or remind students of things that they need to remember all at once, instead of having to do 4 separate messages for 4 different groups. That's a neat feature there. And then, so when you're finished, you want to click close all the rooms. And this is going to push everybody back into the main room. And the countdown will begin, and everyone is sent back after 60 seconds because that's what it defaults to, or however long you designated in your options beforehand. And so that's how you use breakout rooms. It's pretty simple. It's just making sure to follow, know what your settings do, and open the rooms and close the rooms. All right, so now let's get into classroom management. So we never want to assume that students know how to use Zoom. And I know it's tempting to do that because how many semesters have we been doing? We've been doing this since last spring, right? But we've got you covered on how to easily add that information into your course. So in all of your classes, if you're going to be using Zoom, you can add the Zoom in your course module to your Courses WT class homepage. So you guys know your homepage where it has your publishing grades module. You guys know what the homepage is, right? So on that page, if you click add course module, then you can search, it's at the very end of the list, but if you select that module, you can add it to your homepage, and it's awesome because it's going to tell students what they need to do before they go to your Zoom meeting, what they need to do to access the meeting, and what to do if they get booted out. So remember, don't send students to that WT Zoom site where we log in to create poll questions and all that for advanced settings. But if you add this module, and again, it's at the listing because it's alphabetical. So if you go to the very end, it's the last one, but it'll add this module here. And it's just going to make it so much easier because you can refer students to that. And once they go through all these steps, they'll be ready to go. So don't forget that's there. You'll have to do that. I'm not sure if it'll hold, but just make sure it's there at the start of every semester after you add it. I think it'll copy over if you copy it, but if it doesn't, you can always just re-add it. Okay, so let's talk about a quick note on the desktop client. So this is, when we talk about the desktop client, this is the Zoom software that lives on your computer or your device. So make sure you update it to get the latest features. And to do this, you simply search on your computer, as shown there. You'll just type in Zoom, and then you open up the program, you click on it, and then this will pop up this window, and you'll be prompted to sign in with your single sign-on credentials. You're going to click on your picture profile, or you may not have it set up, but you might see just a little gray icon of a person there, and you can click on that. And then at the very bottom, you'll see where it says check for updates. And so remember to do this occasionally. Students also have to do this. If you're up to date, that's good. So if you find an update on yours, remind your students to do that. So what happens is if you get a cool feature, for instance, last semester, we got that cool feature where students can self-select whatever breakout room. Well, you couldn't access that unless you downloaded the update. So what happened is a faculty member set that up for students to self-select because he had a large class and he had several groups, but it didn't work for a couple of students. And it's because they hadn't updated their software. So always make sure that's up to date, check it. And if a student can't see a function or you're not seeing a function, it's probably because you haven't updated. So I just want to remind everybody about that. And so let's go ahead and talk about our in-meeting controls. And I'm going to change this we're going to look at this here. So everybody can see my in-meeting controls, right? And what I mean by in-meeting controls is this strip down here at the bottom where you see your microphone, your video, all of that. So I'm going to assume everybody can see that. So first and foremost, this is just gonna, all this stuff is gonna come in handy for your classes, because sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. Something can happen and we don't know how to handle these things. But first, if you click on this little green shield at the top, when you're the host, you can always get your meeting information. So I know it happens all the time. You have students emailing you or somebody calling you, or you have a meeting with your colleagues and they're saying, I can't find the link. Can you send it to me? Well, you can just click copy link, drop that in an email, or send that or put it in your course or send it to whatever student you need to, and it's accessible there. And so that includes the password and everything. So if they click on that link, they're good to go. So all of that is there. Also, if you click on this little gear here at the top, that'll pop up your settings that are on your Zoom desktop version there. And so you have all of these settings, and we can't go through them all, but there's some really neat settings that you should know about and that you may want to look at when you get a chance. I would love to do a more advanced Zoom and talk about these settings, so that might happen in the future. But just know that that's there, and you can get to your Zoom account on your desktop. And so that's how you do that. Now, you guys know all about your microphones and your video settings. If you click these little carrot tops, you'll see more options. So if you're ever having a problem with your mic or you can't hear somebody, you might want to move these around and see what works. You can also click on the audio settings here, and that'll pop up the settings on your desktop client as well. And then here for your video settings, if you click that carrot top, the same thing, you get more options. You can switch between your different webcams if you have them. This is where you can also choose a virtual background. Like for instance, I'm outside on campus. There, you can change your virtual background. If you're logged into your WT account, we have a ton of cool WT backgrounds. So you can change them here. And, or if you decide you don't want any, you can just click none there. We'll just pick, I like the bright ones, but there's a lot that you can pick from there, especially if you're at home, you don't want people to see the mess behind you, or you want to keep your home private. There's always that virtual background there that you can place. And then also there is a section for video filters. Now, a lot of people don't know about these. If you're a more lighthearted type of person, you don't mind doing things like maybe changing up your camera filter to get people's attention. You can use all sorts of other filters to put on yourself. They're not super professional, but hey, they might get a student's attention. So just know all of this stuff is here, and you may be interested in using these at some point, just to lighten things up, because Zoom meetings get boring. So I'm all for anything that'll make it fun. And then also when you click on those video filters, there is a studio effects. So just know that you can give yourself some better eyebrows. You can change colors. You can give yourself some lip color if you needed to. Maybe you woke up a little late and forgot you were having that meeting. You can make yourself look a little better on screen there. So I'm going to go ahead and let me make sure those are on none. I don't want to have all that on. So that's there. And there's other features there. Actually, I wanted to show you guys something in the video settings that not a whole lot of people know about. There is this touch up appearance option here. So you want to have that checked. And basically what this does is it'll touch up your appearance. So it's kind of like putting makeup on you. It's going to soften those lines. It's going to remove that discoloration. So you'll just look a lot better on camera, especially if you forgot you had that Zoom meeting and you rush in there to get on. So I like to keep it halfway just so I don't scare anybody in person, but it does help. So just know that that's in the video options there if you want to play with that. I really like it. All right, so now that you know that there's those carrot tops there, let's talk about the security button here at the bottom. And so this is kind of your lifesaver here. Let's talk about what is available here. Once you start your class, I know some people are very about being on time. And if you don't want people coming in later, or for whatever reason, you just want to lock down the meeting, maybe you're paranoid of students sharing Zoom links, you don't want any Zoom bombing, we can lock the meeting and not have anybody come in. So now nobody is allowed to come in. I'm going to unlock that just in case I get booted out, because I want to be able to come back in. So just know that if you lock the meeting and you get booted out, you may not be able to come back in. You can enable a waiting room here. So for instance, while I was getting ready for the presentation, I enabled the waiting room while I got everything ready on my screen, because I didn't want people in here watching me trying to get my camera right, fixing my hair and all that. So I enabled the waiting room, and once I got everything done, I unchecked that, and then everybody was able to come in. So I know some people are like, I hate that waiting room. I have to keep stopping to get people back in, and it's just inconvenient. Well, you can turn it off while you're in the meeting. It's very handy to have it on as you're getting ready, and then you can admit everybody at once, turn it off, and you're all set. And then everybody will come in as they come in afterward. You can hide profile pictures. For instance, we can see Chris's smiling face there, but what if it was something inappropriate? What if somebody put something that should not be on the screen? We can hide everybody's pictures, and then they go away. But we do want to see Chris's smiling face there. So you can turn those on or off. And then here under allow participants to, you have full control over what everybody does all at once. So if you want to allow students to share their screen, you can check that. If you want to allow chat, you can check that. If you don't want to allow chat, you can turn it off here. I do want to allow chat, so I'm going to leave it checked. You can also have students rename themselves. Remember, we were talking about, I went ahead and turned that on. We were talking about if you take attendance, or if students participate in a poll and you want a record and refer to that report afterward, they have to have their full name. If they have something like this, like I know that's Carol, but you may not know everybody's student's name. So just know that you can allow them to rename themselves, and then they can bring up their participants panel, and they can go to more and then click rename. So that's how students can rename themselves. You might want to leave that on, or just know that sometimes people rename themselves in appropriate names. Like if you're a fan of The Simpsons or ever watched The Simpsons, when Bart calls Moe's and gives funny names, I've seen that people do that in Zoom meetings. So just know you may want to only turn that on when you want them to change it, and then turn it off so they don't keep changing it. So just know that that's there. You can allow people to unmute themselves or not. So right now everybody's muted. If I decided, I don't want to hear from anybody, I could uncheck that, and then you guys wouldn't be allowed to unmute yourselves. The same thing with video. I can turn off everybody's video here, and then you guys aren't able to restart your video. So these are very important things that you want to know about. You can unmute everybody. You can mute everybody all at once, or you can stop everybody from sharing their video. So these are very important options that you can do at once. Or if you click on your participants panel, you can do that individually. Like for instance, if Chris gets unruly, or he's being too loud, or I keep hearing him unmute himself, then you can, I can specifically disable his ability to mute or start his video. So you can do that individually, but I like the security tab because you can do it all at once, and you don't have to worry about, well, where is that sound coming from? I don't know who's making that sound. You don't have to do that. You can just mute everybody at once. Also, you can annotate on shared content. I've been sharing my content with you all this time, and you could draw on it. Or if you don't want people annotating your content, or if you start seeing scribbles on your screen, then you might want to click on that and remove people's ability to annotate on the content. You can also remove a participant. If you click on that, your participant screen will pop up, and then I can say, oh, Vanessa, she's being too distracting. We can remove her. Or if it's a Zoom bomber, you can remove them there. Now, if you don't remember anything else about this session, please, please, please remember you have a panic button. If something happens, you have a Zoom bomber, you're hearing inappropriate things coming through the microphone. If there's anything disruptive in your course and you panic, instead of freezing or saying, who's doing that? Who's doing that? And then it just keeps happening. Please know that you have a suspend participant activities button. This is your panic button. When you click on this, I'm not going to do it now because it would turn everything off. When you click on that, it disables everybody's camera, including yours. It disables everybody's mic, including your own. It stops any sharing. It clears out people's names. It clears out people's pictures. So if something inappropriate comes out and you have no idea what to do, just remember, hit security and suspend participant activities, and you can shut it all down. So everybody shuts down and nobody can do anything. They can't turn their camera back on. They can't unmute themselves. They can't put their picture back up. Only you have the control to either start your camera back again or unmute yourselves. And that's handy for you because sometimes you're at home and something may start happening behind you that you don't want people to see. So you can always suspend all the activity, but I don't want to do that now because it would take me off my screen. It would take my mic away. It would take everything away. But just know that's there when you need it. Don't forget that's there. All right, so now let's move on to the participants panel. As we saw earlier, you can click on actual participants and you can make other people a host if they need more privileges, like to share a screen or end a meeting, start a meeting. Maybe you need to leave early and you're going to have somebody else end the meeting. You can make somebody else a host. You can make somebody a co-host. And then I can say, hey, Chris, you need to rename yourself. I can only give him the option to rename himself versus opening it up for everybody. Or I can report somebody, a user that's maybe not supposed to be in the class. I can report them there. So that's the participants panel. And of course, we can ask to mute or unmute individually. All right, you guys know all about polls. Now let's talk about the chat panel. Let me bring that over because I had it on this side. So this is what chat looks like right now. I set it to where if you chat with everybody. Or you can chat with individuals. This would send Carol a direct message here. And another thing you want to know about is there's these 3 dots. So if this is smaller, you see the 3 dots there. There are more options there. If you don't want students chatting with anybody, you can turn it off here. Nobody can chat with anybody. If you only want them to chat with you, you can put that there, or you can have everybody chat with everyone publicly. So there's different options. Some people love chat, some people hate it. So it's up to you. Also, you have the option to save chats. You do have to turn on an option at the WT Zoom site if you want to enable save chat, but you can click this and it saves the chat from when you click save. So for instance, I clicked save chat and it'll put it in my folder. And just so you know, you can always access your chat. It's going to put it in your documents folder, and everybody has a documents folder that's called a Zoom folder. And then you'll see your Zoom meeting date and title, and then you can go in there and then you'll see the chat, and it saves it as a text message there. Now, please note that it only saves it from when you hit save. So if, for instance, I hit save right now, anything happening after this, if I don't save that, then it's not going to be saved. So you could appoint somebody in your class to save the chat at the end of the meeting, but just know that when you turn the setting on, everybody in the class can save the chat, not just you. So know that that option is there. Let me make sure I went over everything. Okay, yeah, we did. And then you can always select who you want to chat with, if you want to chat with publicly or individually. And then here's another option that everybody should know about, the share screen option. So I know kind of people have done Zoom in a rush and maybe they didn't get the full instructions and they're kind of just, okay, I know I got to share my screen. We always recommend that you share your full screen. That way, whatever application you bring up shows up in the screen. I know it's tempting if you see your PowerPoint or something on the web that you want to show. I know it's tempting to share just that single application, but then what happens when you want to show something else? Well, you're only showing that application and then everybody's like, well, I can't see. What are you talking about? And then it's like super frustrating because you're like, well, it's on my screen. Why can't you see it? So our recommendation, share your screen. That way, whatever is on your screen is visible to your students. Don't select an application. The other important thing, especially if you're in one of the classrooms, is you want to click share sound. When you share your sound from your computer, if you play a video, everybody's going to be able to hear the sound from the computer versus if that's off, you're playing the video and it's your mic's trying to pick up from the speaker the sound from the video. So always click share sound. And if you're going to show a video, click optimize for video clip. That way your videos don't show up as choppy. So always click those two options and then click share. And so one of the other things I want to talk about, we have right now we're in the basic tab. But there is an advanced tab, and this is really cool. I wanted to use it today, but you can't use it while you're sharing your full screen. But there is this option that you can use your PowerPoint as your virtual background. So if you have PowerPoints, it'll superimpose your camera feed in there. So instead of you having your house background or your virtual background becomes your PowerPoint presentation and you're inside the presentation. So it's not dividing the student's attention. They're not trying to focus on your video feed on one box and then what you're sharing on the other box. It's all in one. And you can resize how big or how small or where on the screen that you want to position yourself. And it's just really neat. It is in beta testing right now, so it's got a few little kinks and you can't do everything you want to do like share your screen, which is why I wasn't able to model it for you today. You can also share a portion of your screen if you wanted. This comes in handy if you've got one monitor and maybe you have notes that you're looking at in the notes section of the PowerPoint. Well, you could share your PowerPoint, swap the screen, show your notes area here like I have, share your notes area and then just zoom in on the actual slide versus showing all of your notes as well. Because sometimes it's hard to do show your full presentation when you have one monitor. Just a tip, if you guys hold down the Alt button on your keyboard and then hit Tab once and then make sure you're holding down the Alt key the whole time, you can bring up all of the applications that are open. So if you have one monitor and you're like, gosh darn it, where did that PowerPoint go? You can select Alt, hit Tab, and then go back to whatever application you're looking for. And so that's how you can do that, or you can just share a portion of your screen. You can also just share music or sound instead of sharing your messy desktop. And there's also, you can share content from a second camera, which I don't really recommend because we have document cameras set up in all the classrooms. So I wouldn't use this option. I would just turn on the document camera and share my screen and show the window that has whatever's showing on the doc cam that way. So I would recommend that you look at those advanced features, play with that PowerPoint with that virtual background. It's pretty neat. I like it a lot. So again, in basic, share your screen, share your sound, and optimize the video clip. And then you can share your screen that way. So when you share your screen, you're going to see these controls here. And if you click annotate, you'll see these tools pop up. So I could write on my PowerPoint to make it more engaging. Have students, instead of just going through a bunch of slides, I could write on this to highlight things. You could write things. I'm actually using my mouse, by the way, if you're wondering how I'm doing that, but I'm just using the drawing tool to do all that. You can type in text You could bring up a blank whiteboard and just type things as you talk. There's the drawing. You can do all sorts of different shapes. You can do stamps. I like to use the spotlight feature. I don't know if you noticed, but my mouse has been a red little dot to draw your attention to certain spots. Well, anytime I share my screen, I click annotate and that pops up these controls. I go to spotlight and I click on that so you guys know where my mouse is. Or you can do the arrow. So if you're going through points on a PowerPoint, you can move this around. I don't really like the color on that. It kind of disappears on certain slides for me, but I like this big red spotlight dot. You can erase these things. You can change colors and format things however you want to. You can undo things. You can redo things. I can clear my whole slides. Or I can save any annotations I do as well. So if you're teaching online and you want students to be able to refer to something you draw, or maybe you work out a problem, you can save those. And again, it'll save it in that Zoom folder in your documents area. And so that's how you use the annotation tools. It's really cool. As we showed here, you're actually allowed to annotate on my content. So if you wanted, you could select the annotate button and start writing on this with your mouse. Oh, I'm sorry, with your draw option. If you wanted to, that is there. Or you can turn it off. Also, what else did I want to show you? So in your more options, actually, I'm trying to think what else. There was something else in annotation I wanted to tell you about. Oh, yes, in my share options. So I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to do a new share. And you can also just share your whiteboard. So if you're in a classroom, people can't see whatever you're writing on the board. So we highly recommend that you do not use the board. Instead, use this, and then your students in class can see it on your screen. And then your students who are on Zoom or watching the recording can see what you're writing as well. So you have the board, which works kind of like exactly the annotation, but here you just get a blank screen and you can maximize it or minimize it however you want. So I'm going to restart my share of my entire screen. Okay, so now that you guys can see my entire screen, those are all the in-meeting controls. One other thing, if you click this caret top here for annotations, here's where you can allow more than one person to share if you wanted to. Maybe you're doing something with groups and you want to see everybody's final group thing on the page, you can do that. And there's some advanced sharing options if you do allow students to annotate on your presentation. You can have it show their names or not show their names. That way students are more accountable, and you can turn off sharing features there. And then of course, you guys know you can stop or pause your recording here. I would just say, just let it record, because if you pause it or stop it, you may forget to restart it and then you lose your whole lecture. You guys know all about breakout rooms and reactions. So those are the in-meeting controls. All right, so I hope, let me see. I'm still gonna go through quite a bit, but we've hit the hour mark. So if you guys need to leave, no problem, you'll get the recording. But now I'm going to talk about Zoom Gloom. So let's talk, this is more on the classroom management. And so, whoops. And so let's get into Zoom Gloom. So if at any point you need to leave, please do so. I'm going over time, but you'll get the recording. So Zoom Gloom is a classroom management topic that a lot of professors, professionals, researchers are talking about. So Zoom is now being used for everything. And many users feel like it's taking a toll on their energy levels. And many have begun to refer to it as Zoom fatigue or Zoom Gloom. So let's explore why this is and consider how it impacts online courses. I think you guys can see my screen. Yeah. Okay, good. I think I forgot to share it the last time I did it. I'm like, they weren't watching my slides. All right, so as you know, so humans, we're always communicating, even if we're quiet. We're social animals, and we naturally read off cues off people we're interacting with when we're in person. And we do this unconsciously without even knowing. And for instance, during an in-person conversation, the brain focuses partly on the words being spoken, but then it also derives additional information and meaning from the nonverbal cues, such as whether someone's facing you or they're turning away like they're about to leave, or they're fidgeting while you talk, or they're inhaling quickly like they're gonna interrupt or say something. And then the contrast, a video call. The video call requires sustained, intense attention to the words being said instead of actually the person. And if the person's framed from the shoulders up, the possibility of viewing hand gestures or other body language is kind of gone, right? So if the video quality is poor or someone's screen freezes, any hope of gleaning something from those minute facial expressions, it's going to be near impossible. So the prolonged eye contact, it's not something we normally do. So in person, sustained eye contact can be a little intimidating, or it can feel overly intimate if you're just staring at somebody the whole time. So in a virtual environment, the eye contact and not being able to get a true sense of your virtual surroundings can cause a slight fight or flight response in a lot of people. And it manifests as stress. And that might be why a lot of Zoom participants aren't turning their cameras on. So has this ever happened to you? So I'm sure this happens to a lot of students. I'm sure this happens to a lot of students. They start just focusing what they look like on camera and they're not even paying attention to what's going on in the class. And so just think about gallery view. Sorry, I'm trying to move that control out of your way. So in gallery view, that's where all the meeting participants appear Brady Bunch style. And so this challenges your brain's central vision, and it's forcing it to decode so many people at once that it comes across, that no one comes across meaningfully, not even the speaker at times, because there's just so many people on the screen. And so on a Zoom call, we're engaged on so many activities, but we're never fully devoting ourselves to focus on one thing in particular. And psychologists call this continuous partial attention. And it applies as much to virtual environments as it does in real ones. So our brains are doing serious multitasking in Zoom. And prolonged split in attention creates a sense of being really drained while having accomplished nothing. So your brain becomes overwhelmed by unfamiliar and excess stimuli, all while being hyper-focused on searching for nonverbal cues that we just can't find. And then so some are referring this to Zoom gloom. After so many meetings, you're just tired and you feel disconnected. So if you're curious about this topic, just search Zoom gloom or Zoom fatigue to learn more. There's lots of people writing about this. It's really interesting stuff. And for me, it explains a lot. And it explains a lot of our frustrations with Zoom. So it's just something to think about. Now, we're not saying never use gallery mode or never use cameras. This is just some insight on the problems that you may be experiencing with students not turning on their cameras. So I know what many of you guys are thinking. You're probably asking yourself, do I really have to use Zoom? Do I have to make Zoom recordings available? Students aren't interacting. I have no idea how things are really going because I can't see anybody engage it like I used to in class. So please don't shoot the messenger. Our team is here to help. Just know that the decision for HyFlex format came through the A&M system and the higher ups here at WT. Please talk to your department heads or deans if you have concerns about HyFlex. That would be more productive than debating it here. So if you don't know about HyFlex or you have the luxury of not having to teach a HyFlex course, HyFlex is a course format that blends the synchronous online learner attendance and the face-to-face learner attendance in a single course offering. So it allows learners to choose when and how they attend. So it's very flexible. And so in a hybrid flexible course, students choose if asynchronous or synchronous is going to fit for them and whatever point in the semester they're at. So they could switch from coming to class at the start and maybe not showing up later, or maybe having car problems and decide, you know what, I'm going to do a Zoom today, things like that. And so you guys know what flexibility means, and flexibility involves a willingness to change and compromise. That's one of its definitions. So many programs at WT are asking faculty to be flexible with in-person courses, so that HyFlex gives students the option to choose from attending in person, via Zoom, or watching the recording later. And I know HyFlex is not ideal. Sorry, I keep pushing that. So HyFlex, I know it's not ideal, and juggling all that in all these course formats, you may have HyFlex in one and online in another. But during a pandemic, it's probably best to be flexible. There's several scenarios, so note that there's not a one size fits all solution that I can give you, but I'm going to start with some basic tips that can help you set Zoom expectations, regardless of if you're teaching a HyFlex course on campus or in a classroom, or you're just online. If you need the basics for using technology in the classroom on campus and Zoom, let us know. We have a couple of documents that'll walk you through the different scenarios. So first off, we've got to be intentional and put our expectations in writing and go over them with students. We've got to spell it out in the syllabus. We also maybe have to put up a set of Zoom rules, but let me get this and drop this in the chat for you guys. So here's an addendum for a syllabus that I found, and you can modify it. Oh, I don't want to send that just to Carol. So that's something you can place in your syllabus. You can modify it, but it gives you a good starting place. And then I also have a set of Zoom rules that I thought were pretty cool. There. Okay, so let me go back to my slides because that's what I forgot the last time. So the rules in that second link, I know they're for K through 12, but it makes some really good points about dress and sitting up and being in a well-lit room, not having your camera just showing the top of your forehead, things like that. So I think we forget that this is still kind of new to everyone. So if we don't spell it out, we can't expect for conditions or the things that annoy us to get better. So remind your students of expectations and rules before your first meeting. Have a slide with expectations before you begin, like I did. If you're using PowerPoint, send out announcements, email, course messages with your expectations and Zoom rules. That way people don't get lax. Send them out as many times as you can during the semester. Also, let them know about consequences. Let them know if you don't attend class, you make yourself vulnerable to falling behind, or you miss opportunities to get help from me, or you miss opportunities to ask questions. Let them know, here is how you'll benefit by coming to class. Here's how you miss out if you don't come to class in these HyFlex formats. So in your expectations, tell students when they're allowed to opt for Zoom or a recording. If you prefer that they come to class, they need to hear you say things like, please come to class even when you don't feel like it. To be successful, you have to do things you don't want to do. It's okay to tell them that. And it's okay to tell them that being tired or lazy cannot be a valid reason for missing class, especially for those early classes. I see that happen a lot. Students are like, I want to sleep in today. I'm just going to look at the Zoom recording later. But we have to remember to say, please don't come to class if you're sick, because we're dealing with the pandemic still. And we have to remember that that's the reason why we're on Zoom. So you want to let them know that just because you want to sleep in, that's not a valid excuse for not coming to class. And if you want to know if your students are getting anything out of Zoom, I know people, that's a major faculty concern. Maybe they're acting like little zombies, or they aren't turning their cameras on. They're not responding when you ask questions. Just ask them why. Faculty at other institutions have sent out surveys. We have that option in WT class, and you can get feedback on what works and what doesn't work in your Zoom meetings. You may be surprised to find that students are getting a lot more out of your videos than you think, even though they might be really quiet or you're not seeing them. So just some things to think about. And here's another thing. If you're in a large classroom, if you're doing HyFlex and that, if you're in a large classroom, you're kind of lucky because that's going to fit if it fits your entire class at 50% capacity, then you may decide to be a little less flexible about Zoom or recordings because everybody fits in the class. You might decide to only give a Zoom link or a recording to students on a case-by-case basis. So you can hide your Zoom link in your course menu and you can hide it in the tools, or simply just don't add it to the course menu. If you do this, please make sure it's okay with your department. Different programs have different requirements due to the topics that they teach. If you're in a smaller classroom, you can't have all of your students in at 50% capacity. So it's probably best that you always make the Zoom meeting link available and the recording available, since everybody enrolled in your class can't physically be there in the class, even if they decide they do want to show up. And yes, I'm sorry to say there's going to be attendance drop off in most of these HyFlex courses. There's always just know that there's that adaptive release setting. You can put on a Zoom video. Maybe you want students to do something before they gain access to that, or you only want to make it available to some students. There is a way that you can do that. We have step-by-step instructions. Just let us know and we can send those to you. If you're in a smaller classroom, it's going to be normal to see a drop in that attendance. You might have everybody, you might be at full capacity at the start of the semester. And then by the end, you may only have a handful of people show up. That is normal. Just keep encouraging attendance. Try not to take attendance personally. If it drops in your in-person courses, it's going to happen. The world is crazy, and there are so many reasons as to why students may not show up and as to why they need more flexibility during these times. And so it's a good thing about HyFlex and Zoom and the Zoom recordings is that if things don't go well at the end of the semester for a student, you can always say, well, I gave the student all of the options I could. So you come off as being very flexible, and it's the student, it falls back on the student. So when you're flexible, you have more leeway to say, I gave them all of these options and they just didn't take them. So again, communicate your expectations, put it in your syllabus, give them regular reminders. Don't exhaust yourself trying to be the Zoom police. You're teaching adults, and ultimately they have to be responsible for their own learning. You just can't do it for them. If you teach online, don't worry about the physical classroom. You have it made in the shade. You don't have to worry about HyFlex. You just get your content to students online, and it's up to you if you add Zoom as a type of synchronous or synchronous option or not. I think it's good to sprinkle it in online courses, but just know that because it's an online course, you're not going to get 100% attendance, and it's probably not. It's not being flexible if you're expecting that or wanting students to do that in an online class. Plus, it's always nice to add a little connection at the start and throughout online classes. All right, so don't shoot the messenger again, please. I'm almost done. We're going to talk about web cameras. A&M says you can't require webcams. So technically, you can't require students to have them on. However, this decision was made back in March of when the pandemic first started, and there was a huge shortage of webcams, and prices for them were sky high. So we're not really having that problem at this point, and most students have an external webcam or a phone or a device like a tablet or a laptop with a camera built in that they can use to attend if you ask them to turn their cameras on. But if you're not happy about this decision, or you think it's dated, and given what you know about Zoom Gloom and HyFlex, if you think it's imperative that your students have their cameras on, talk to your department heads and deans. You may be able to require that cameras are on for your class or your specific program, but that's not my call to make. It's not IT's call to make. And honestly, I kind of don't want to debate that here, if you should or you shouldn't. But I will say that from an IT perspective, I know some of you have probably experienced this. If you have students on Zoom who are using phone data because they don't have internet, or if they have low bandwidth because they live out in the boonies, or it was all they could afford, you might consider limiting camera time. The larger the class, the more camera feeds, and that can cause lag times or cause students to drop off unexpectedly. And it could be because the student has a slow computer or a slow internet connection. Sometimes they just don't have a good enough computer to run all these feeds. And so that's also a reason why you maybe want to provide recordings of meetings so that students with low bandwidth aren't penalized if they can't get into a meeting or stay in the meeting. So again, I know this isn't ideal, but if we can make it through this semester, I know you've already made it through the fall, so just know that this semester is already off to a better start, and it's going to go more smoothly now because you know all about those in-meeting controls and more about engagement. So, do you guys have any questions? Let me bring up my panel.